This video will cover the discussion about language and gender. To be specific, it will include the discussion on first, the language, second, the gender, and thirdly, the relationship, the language and gender. Next is gender lifestyles, and lastly is the sexist language. So what is language? Language is the principal method of human connection consisting of words used in structured and conventional way and conveyed by speech, writing, or gesture. Next, what is gender? Gender is either of the two sexes, male and female, especially when considered with reference to social and cultural differences. Gender is the range of characteristics pertaining to femininity and masculinity and differentiating between them. Language and gender refers to the relationship between the language of male and female. Gender differences is not only a reflection of the speeches between male and female, but also a reflection of their different living styles and attitudes. So one of the main topics that we will discuss today is Gender Lifestyles by Deborah Tannen. But first, let me first give the brief information about who is Deborah Tannen. Deborah Tannen is an American author and professor of linguistics at Georgetown University. Deborah is also known as the author of You Just Don't Understand Women and Men Conversion, a popular book that studies the conversational styles between men and women and helps breaks the stereotypical ways of receiving messages from the opposite gender. Deborah Tannen has made many contributions towards understanding how the language of everyday conversations affects relationships, and in this book, she has outlined her job in bringing that awareness to the general public. What is the meaning of genderless? The term genderless coined by Deborah Tannen is to describe the way that conversation of men and women are not right and wrong, superior and inferior. The way they are speaking is just different. In genderless theory, it proposes that human use communication in order to connect with others and men use communication in order to achieve status. Tannen focuses on the difference between rapport and rapport talk. First, in rapport talk, it is communication style of females meant to promote social affiliation and emotional connection, whereas in the rapport talk, it is the typical style of men which focus on exchanging information with little emotional import. Going forward, to identify the gender differences in language use, here are five subtopics that gender-led theory proposes. One is this public speaking versus private speaking. Two is telling a story. Three in listening. Four asking a question. And lastly is the conflicts. Let's now start to identify the gender differences in language use in terms of public speaking and private speaking. So in women, they are quiet in public and in private they are talkative. In contrast to this, men tend to be talkative in public but quiet in private. Second is how men and women have differences in telling a story. In women, they tend to express their desire by telling stories about others. Also, used to downplay in telling a story. In men, they tell more stories than women, especially jokes. Then on listening, women listening to a story or explanation tend to hold eye contact, offer head nods, and react with yeah, aha, right, or other responses that indicate I'm listening or I'm with you. On listening for a man concerned with status, the overt style of listening means I'm with you. The next one is on asking a question. In asking a question, they use it to establish a connection with others. Meanwhile, for men, they don't ask for help. Lastly is the difference on language use between men and women on having the conflicts. To women, conflict is threat to connection. That is the reason why they avoided it usually. While for men, they usually initiate conflicts.
Hello everyone, I'm Muhammad Al Barakis Abdul Hamid and I'm one of the reporter in Language and Gender. My topic is sexiest language. But before we proceed to discussion, we should define sexiest language first. Sexiest language is the representation of men and women unequally as if members of one sex were less completely human and have a fewer rights than members of the other sex. Sexist language also use stereotypes of women and men, but more often the disadvantages of women. So this is the idea of sexist language. It's kind of discrimination either men and women, but this is more like the disadvantages of women in language. In other words, to illustrate what do you mean sexiest language, I pick some example. It says a woman has a long hair but short brain, meaning that women are excuse me for the word, meaning that women are stupid and hide their stupidity in beautifying physically themselves. It means that the women are believed to cover the flaw of stupidity with physical appearance. This is an example of discrimination against women. Another example, which is in different language, in Kabyle, Ignierngka argas na samitos. Another proverb that means the sky is stronger than earth, men stronger than women. It means that a woman's life is at the mercy of their husband, and as the sky dominates the earth, man dominates the woman. This proverb is used to raise the superiority of men over the woman. As you can see, all of these proverbs are all against women and not men, okay? And men here are either neglected or sometimes being used for superior for being superior than women in general. So these example that you can use in order to prove your point that language are sexiest, or language is a sexiest towards women in general. Okay, before we proceed to the discussion, I asked two questions to which the sexiest language to which our language systems are sexiest is the number one. Number two is to which are some ways of using language sexiest. We should proceed to the number one first. The what I mean language system. When I say language system, it means within the language itself. Okay, the language, the way language is constructed, the way words appear, and the way words are formed. This is all language system. Okay, for example, is the use of men to refer both gender, the appearance of the word man in woman, and mankind. See, this is sexiest because we use men to refer both gender and mankind to refer the both gender also. Number two question is, to which are some ways of language are sexiest? It's basically the way you use language or how people use language. But instead of employing the pronouns they, them, their, or one, wants to refer both gender, people use the third singular pronoun he, his, him. Example, if you love him, let him know, which is incorrect. If you love them, let them know. Because so that the person who is reading or at least listening without knowing the context might think that the person we are talking here is about either man or a woman. Another example, the student has to do his homework, which is incorrect. The student has to do one's homework because when you use one or one's with an apostrophe s, we have the clear meaning that the student we are talking about can be either a male or female. So this is the way of using language are sexiest, and all of these are called asymmetry. Asymmetrical representation of men and women in a given language. So it means sexiest. So sexiest language is a reference to asymmetrical representation of men and women in a given language. Some sociolinguists think that the language makes discrimination by favoring men to women. As you can see, the meaning of the asymmetry is imbalance of the discrimination, the superiority of men over the woman. That's an example of the asymmetry. So now we will proceed to where can we find the sexiest language. There are three ways to find sexiest language. which is the first one is the sexism in the use of title in English. Number two is the marked and unmarked term in English. And number three is the sexism discourse. I should discuss we should proceed to the sexual number one first. Sexism in the use of title in English. Example is the policeman, congressman, mailman, chairman. Are all example of title in English, because when you say policeman, it says only a man without woman. That is sexist. Number two, marked and unmarked term in English. Example is the actor, actress, lion, lioness, waiter, and waitress. All of these are an example of marked and unmarked terms in English. This is also sexist because when you example is when you see so many lions, we prefer them to call them lions. We don't know which men and women in them. Okay. Last one is the sexism discourse. This is related to the use of words, phrase, or sentence, or proverb and citations against women. Women. This is this is what we call sexism in discourse at semantic level, which means it is found in the meaning. And example of these are the proverb that I mentioned before. Those are sexism in discourse at semantic level. Sometimes we find it at syntactic level, which means the sentence way structured. Example is the no man's island or one man's treasure. One man's trash is another man's treasure. That's all, guys. Thank you for listening. The discussion is short, but I hope you understand it. And if you have any question, just tell me in the classroom, and I will do my best to answer it for you. Thank you.